My name is Janecek. I'm currently residing in Texas. I grew up in Yoakum, Texas. I was a member of St. Joseph Parish in Yoakum, and I was blessed to know Father Kram and still inspired by him at this point in time. I mainly got to know him through my mother, Janecek. She was the parish secretary in Yoakum at St. Joseph, and she also knew him, Father Kram, during high school. I think she was about 2 years older than him, and I always found it interesting that she said when they were in high school they used to go to dances and she would dance with him, because when I knew him he was in the wheelchair and I couldn't picture him dancing, but he didn't contract polio until he went to seminary, so that was one of the things that always amazed me, that she said he was actually a very good dancer. So I didn't really meet Father Kram until I was probably later high school or early college. Mom being the parish secretary, she would often have the parish priest over for dinner or sometimes lunch on the weekends. And so it was quite common for us to have priests there. And once Father Kram, he was able to get a van that allowed him to actually get out of the hospital and move around. Mom one day says, well, Father Kram's coming to lunch. I think it was on a Sunday. She said, Father Kram's coming to lunch, and I need y'all to go pick him up. Y'all being my older brother Tim and I. And I didn't mind him coming to lunch, but I was a little taken back to have to go pick him up, because again, I knew he was in the wheelchair just from seeing in the hospital occasionally. And I was a little nervous about what to do and how to do it and everything else. But once I got to the hospital, I was really amazed, because he's so calming. He was happy to see us. He knew our names when we got there. He was expecting us, and he took the wheelchair out of the door to the van, and then he just started very calmly telling us where things were, what to do, how to do it, and I was just amazed at how detailed he was and how to go about it. So he would tell us to unlock the door, things like that, which we knew, but then he would say, now there's going to be, and I forget the exact details, but he was going to say there's going to be a red button, on the side of this door, push that, and that's going to lower down the lift. So again, he was just amazing that he knew exactly where everything was, and then he rolled his wheelchair onto the ramp. When we got him up on the ramp, and he rolled it into the van, and he could actually position himself in there. And then he had to be strapped down with some straps that were inside the van that we would hook up to the wheelchair to keep him from moving around. But there again, he told us exactly how to do it, where things were, what to do. He was just very, very calming. I was just very impressed with him. And then when we got up to the house, kind of the same thing. He told us what to do to basically do it all in reverse to get him down. We did have to help him, because we didn't have any ramps at our house, so we had to help him up one step. We lifted him up to get him up on the steps in his chair. And he was a little concerned about that, just because he didn't have any control over that. But anyway, we got him upstairs, up the steps, and got him into the house. And, we had him over a number of times, and I was just always amazed whether it was just, the immediate family with, at that time, generally Tim and myself and Kim, my younger sister, and then Mom and Dad, or if we had a big group there for kind of a holiday weekend. So my extended family and maybe some other friends and family. He was always the same. He treated everybody the same, whether it was my grandmother, who was probably at that time in her 80s, whether it was the grandkids that were around, and they may be only 5, 6, 8 years old. He treated everybody the same. And actually, one time I remember we had Miss Cynic, which was an elderly lady that my mom also took care of, and they had the best conversation, just because he would relate to anybody at their level. He just had that way about him. He could put anybody at ease. And I think, to me, reflecting on it, I think he just treated everybody as a child of God. He saw everybody the same. He didn't care where you were in life, what you were doing in life. He was just interested in you, and that's how he treated everybody. So So I was always impressed with that. And, you know, the meals, everybody just liked to have him around, I think, because of, he was, I wouldn't say a calming personality, but you just sense something about him, and people like to be around him. So other things I remember, Mom being the secretary and knowing him, and she would also go visit people at the hospital. He had asked her to help with his record keeping and finances and books and things like that. So she would go to the hospital occasionally. I don't know how often she would do it, and she would help him with those things. He would again tell her where things were, receipts or things that he needed her to keep track of. And again, he was very, very organized and meticulous in the details. And then she would do those things for him. And I remember her coming back, you know, on the one occasion, and she said that he was still in bed, and it was about 10 o'clock in the morning when she got there. And she said he was still in bed. She said, yeah, he told her, he said, yeah, the nurses, I guess, are busy this morning, and they haven't been able to get to me, because he was dependent upon them to get him out of bed each morning, and get him dressed and get him in the wheelchair and, you know, take care of those things for him. But she said he never complained about it. He was just like so nonchalant that, you know, he was just waiting for them to show up and get to him. And I remember thinking when she told me that story, I was probably, you know, my early 20s, I would guess. So I was probably about the age that he was when he contracted polio. And, you know, I remember thinking, it must be amazing to know what it's like to be able to do things. And like for me at that age, what I would have already accomplished physically, moving around, doing by 10 o'clock in the morning. And yet for him, he was stuck in that bed. There wasn't anything he could do about it, but yet he was so patient and just, but you know, he didn't complain. It was just, his patience was just amazing at what he had to, I guess, to be put up with. But to him, he was, you know, it was just his life, and he was very accepting of it. So he never, and that's the other thing Mom said, he never complained when she would go visit him or when he came to the house. You know, the most complaint I heard from him was, could you pull up my sweater because I'm a little cool. That's the most I ever heard him complain. And she said too, he never complained. I think that's why his ministry was so amazing there in the hospital. Like she said, when he would go into a room, or she would go around with him to the rooms, and people, you know, patients, other people, everybody always treated him with such respect, or you just treated him differently because of what he was going through and how he dealt with it. So that was just always an amazing thing to me, you know, when she said that he'd be in that bed. And, you know, it happened more than that one time, obviously. There were a lot of times when the nurses they just had other things going on, they had to take care of other patients, and they couldn't deal with it. And I think the same thing, you know, he said would happen at night. When they couldn't get him to bed, he would just have to stay in the wheelchair for longer periods of time before he could get him to bed. And, you know, she also relayed that his bed, and occasionally I would go into his room too to help him with something, but his bed would have to rock back and forth. And that's something else to me, was just, as a able-bodied, you know, 20-year-old, I couldn't quite fathom laying in a bed that had to do that, and the way he dealt with it. But it was, he just was phenomenal with his patience and his humility, how he dealt with other people. I know going to Mass at the chapel, I didn't go that often to his Masses, but it was a special thing. It just, you know, there again, he was there, he was doing everything as a priest, but he couldn't physically do the things. So he couldn't lift a ciborium, he couldn't lift a chalice. You know, but in some ways, I guess that as someone attending, you know, the sacrifice of Mass, it brought me even more closer seeing what he was going through, but yet the miracle was still happening, the miracle of transubstantiation. You know, the sermons, they were always simple, but they had a very good message. He worked on them a lot. which was the other thing that amazed me, that he typed with that stick. And I don't know how long it would take him to type out a sermon. Mom was there some, and she said it took him a while, but to think about, even though it was a short sermon, to peck at each letter on that typewriter, the way he had to with that stick, it just amazed me. And that's the other thing, he didn't mind help, but he was always preferred to just do things that he could on his own. So he would ask for help, but there again, he wasn't humble when he needed to ask for it. He recognized that he needed help, and he would ask for it, and have him do it for him. But you know, I guess his memory too. He was a very smart man, because his memory was just amazing when he would direct you for things, whether it was in the van or in his room. When he needed something and he would ask you to get it for him, he knew exactly which drawer it was in, and then it was in this drawer, and you're going to find in there whatever it was, a blue folder, and in that blue folder, if you pull out the papers that have this on or whatever it was. So he was very meticulous, knowing where everything was. I guess he had to, but that's just the way he went about his life. So, I was very happy when they started the cause to open the case for him being a saint. To me, he always was, but it got me really thinking more about his life and the fact that I had the privilege to know him and be around him, because he really was inspiring. And the more I think about him now, the things that he did and how he interacted with people, and just talking to the people that knew him or other people that were around him, all I can say is he was just inspiring. I mean, to me, he was, when I think about frustration that I get, impatient, I try to remember him and what he had to go through. Because usually my impatience are just something I'm annoyed at, and it's not something I really have to deal with for the long term. Whereas him, so many of the things he had to put up and deal with, that was just part of his day-to-day life. And so that's something I try to remember, whether it's impatience with the kids or just in traffic or whatever it might be. The fact that I'm still able to do so many things, and those are just some things that I'm dealing with. That, and then the humility. Again, he was, whatever crowd he was in, whether it was at the hospital, whether it was at the house with other people that we had there, he just, I wouldn't say blended in, but he just dealt with people one-on-one. He very seldom wanted to have like a conversation other than maybe saying the grace or something like that, where he was speaking to the whole group. His preferred, how he liked to deal with people was just one-on-one. So if we had 20 people in the house, or 10 people in the house, 5 people in the house, most of the time he'd like to have conversations one-on-one or maybe one-on-two. And that's, he just liked to deal with people for the most part one-on-one. So, but his humility just always strikes me too. That's what I remember about him. So that's about all I have to say about it.